SmartB Sports Update Podcast is brought to you by Optimum CBD. For all your rest and recovery needs, CBD products are your best bet. Go to OptimumCBD.store to order now. Free delivery on all orders over $99. You must be over 18 to order. I use Optimum CBD products personally for my rest and recovery. I train 6 days a week in Jiu-Jitsu, as you've probably heard on the SmartB Sports Update Podcast. I teach, I train, I compete. And without Optimum CBD products, I wouldn't be able to do it. Optimum CBD for all your rest and recovery needs. How are you, Dan?
Morning, John. 2 sleeps to go, eh? A little bit over 48 hours. That first Vegas game will be kicking off, so this will be our last off-season podcast for a while. 11 a.m. Sunday our time.
I've got nothing on Sunday. I was quite shocked to see for the first time in like months, nothing in my calendar. And then my wife was saying last night, what time is the Vegas game on Sunday? And I said, oh yeah, we've got nothing on. She said, yeah, we're watching the Vegas game.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay. So you're keen for it, fair enough.
There you go. Your Sunday is sorted then.
Pretty pumped for it. It's about time. Meanwhile, of course, we have so many things that have happened before, leading up to the game. Mm-hmm. First off, White Ribbon has decided to cut ties with the NRL and requested to Andrew Abdo that all promotional material naming White Ribbon by the NRL be removed because the NRL invited the sitting president, Donald Trump, and Dana White to the Las Vegas games. They said their quote was all about how Dana White and Donald Trump are both what's it called? They're both guilty of assault against women. Dana White famously slapped his wife in a nightclub.
And Donald Trump in 2023 was found liable for the sexual abuse of E. Jean Carroll in a civil case.
If anybody thinks this is about domestic violence or whatever, violence against women by the White Ribbon, they're kidding themselves. It's solely about hatred for Donald Trump. Because they invited Joe Biden last year. Joe Biden is guilty of sexual misconduct against women and has like a whole Wikipedia page dedicated to it. It's like heaps of women came forward that he'd been he'd sexually assaulted them at work and during their time working when he was a senator, and some woman ended up getting a divorce because she became so depressed, and it's solely about Donald Trump. It's nothing to do with...
Well, that's a fair point, and I did see a quote from an official with White Ribbon who said, and I quote, "The organisation has not undertaken any work with the NRL since 2020." And you go, well, all right, well then, why have they highlighted it then? If it's no big deal and it's 5 years since they've done anything with the NRL, then why have they felt the need to highlight it?
Because they're social justice warriors that are virtue signalling. Doesn't matter if you like or dislike Donald Trump or Dana White for that matter. The hypocrisy is what people should be outraged about. Like, White Ribbon haven't worked with the NRL since 2020, apparently, as you just said. There's domestic violence cases in the NRL all the time. Not daily or anything like that, but I did see a TikTok thingy about it where they listed a bunch of domestic violence things in the NRL from like 2010 or something to 2018 that the White Ribbon continued to maintain their partnership with the NRL.
Yeah, so they were happy to keep the partnership through all of those instances you're talking about, and there've been so many. You're loath to go through them all, individually.
Yeah, it was a long TikTok video.
Yeah, but there've been so many incidents. And of course, it's terrible. We don't like to see any sort of violence against women or anybody for that matter. We don't like seeing violence full stop, no matter who the victims are. But as you said, they were happy to maintain this partnership while there were all these other instances of domestic violence associated with the NRL. And then the moment that Donald Trump gets brought into it, all of a sudden it's a problem.
Yeah, and they talked about Dana White. Peter V'landys in the NRL. We talked about Dana White before Christmas on the podcast, going to the NRL and how Peter V'landys wanted Dana White to go. And at the time, we discussed how that's actually like a good get because Dana White is good friends with people like Joe Rogan and Donald Trump, and it would, encourage a lot of those kind of guys to possibly go with Dana White. So Dana White has been invited for 3 months. And it's the second that it's Donald Trump that the White Ribbon has this like stand against violence. White Ribbon is an organisation that is against violence against women, But the second that it's Donald Trump, they take a stand against the NRL. Like I said before, it doesn't matter if you like or hate Donald Trump. This is if you think this is anything more than a hypocrisy from White Ribbon virtue signalling, you're kidding yourself.
That's right. I would say, though, I did see the video that Peter V'landys did that he recorded on Fox News, and I thought it was cringeworthy the way he was talking.
Absolutely.
At the start of it, so if you haven't looked at it, viewers, listeners, if you haven't looked at it, I recommend you jump on and look at it, because it's 10 out of 10 on the cringeworthy scale. He starts the video by saying... He says something like, Mr. President, Fox News, fair and balanced. He's talking to Trump like he's 5 years old or something. It was just cringeworthy, the whole thing from V'landys. And then, we're going to talk about those Raiders players in a second as well who got involved in that scuffle as well. So, you make fair points about like White Ribbon. They seem to have used this as an opportunity. And of course, we don't like to see violence against women or anybody for that matter. But given that they were willing to still be partnered with the NRL throughout that number of incidents you were talking about, but now all of a sudden Donald Trump comes into it and it's a big problem, and it wasn't a problem for... I think David Gallup was the one who... I think he was an ambassador with White Ribbon back when he took over as CEO, or soon after he became the CEO. He was the one who brought about this partnership with White Ribbon. So we're going back that far. We're talking about going back 2 decades here through all these different incidents that have occurred. And now all of a sudden Donald Trump comes in and it's one big problem.
Yeah, they had no problem with Joe Biden.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Joe
right.
Biden has an equal number of sexual assault, or approximately about the same number of sexual assault.
Yeah, and I remember there was that really odd video of him... touching a woman, and I think it made that woman feel uncomfortable. So there was that. So that's the thing. If this is an issue with Trump this year, well, why wasn't an issue with Joe Biden last year? They were in Vegas last year.
And they invited Joe Biden.
Yeah, and he got invited. So why wasn't it an issue for Joe Biden last year, and it's an issue for Donald Trump this year? That having been said, V'landys had that really awkward invitation, that cringeworthy invitation. And then there's this fight that's broken out between these Raiders players, which we'll get to. So very clunky from Peter V'landys. And I did do a column about this on our website the other day. He's out there trumpeting, saying, the NRL's the best code in Australia, on the front foot, and saying, we want Trump to go, we want Trump to go. Well, things have blown up in his face a little bit, and I think he needs to get back in his box, to be honest.
That's a lot of sentiment. It's a little bit weird, when V'landys took over. I remember when Peter V'landys was the signing, and like so many people were so excited, and how quickly rugby league, everybody turns. Now he's the worst thing that's ever happened to rugby league. But to be honest, it's a numbers game, right? Rugby league has grown. They've got the biggest memberships ever, the biggest ratings ever, the biggest money ever. They're going to have the biggest TV deal ever. And no matter how much, no matter how much you dislike Peter V'landys and his personality or whatever, if the things are growing, then he's doing a good job. I always have the biggest gripe with him around rules changes. And apparently, from my understanding, based on some conversations I've had now, he is very heavily involved in rules changes. And that's something like, bro, stay in your lane. Like, if you want to get rules changed for horse racing, go ahead. But, the rugby league rule changes, nobody supports any rugby league rules changes. So, yeah, that video is hilarious as well, by the way.
Yeah, and the problem is, look, I think it's... I don't want to be made to look a fool of on the day of the game, but I think it's 99% certain that Trump's not going to be at the game.
Oh, he's definitely not.
And look, the problem is that, and it seems like V'landys hasn't thought about this. What you got to think about Trump is this is a guy who's coming off an assassination attempt not that long ago. He's now the sitting, and back then even he wasn't the sitting president. Now he's the sitting president. So now he's even. I know that. So that means he's got to have more security than what he had to have then. And the fact that he's the sitting president, well, that just makes him more of an assassination target. So you got to think about these considerations. If this was a realistic chance of happening, well, this has got to be planned months in advance. Yeah. The amount of strategic planning involved with having a sitting president go to an event like this, it's not just something where you can just pop up on Fox News with a Trump ball and say, oh, come to the game, Donald. It takes a lot more than that to get the sitting US president to come to the game. And what you got to remember is Trump didn't even stay till halftime at the Super Bowl. He went to the Super Bowl and couldn't even last till halftime. If he's not staying until halftime at the Super Bowl, what chance is he of going to some game that he's never heard of for 4 hours?
Yeah, well,
and sitting through 2 games?
Never going to watch 2 games of the NRL.
No.
I mean, it's the same amount of time to get to the NRL.
I mean, I know, like you, obviously we've been brought up in Australia, so we'd go, and we love rugby league, so it's easy for us to sit through 2 NRL games. Well, but someone who's American, who's been brought up in America, they look at a game of rugby league and go, what the hell is this? Well, they don't know what it is. They've been brought up on a different sport.
2 games of rugby league is about the same time as one half of NFL. So. Seems like it anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but that's the thing. You know, you can go out there and make some invitation on Fox News, but he's never going to go to the game. No. So you just look silly.
Well, that was the key to it was actually getting Dana White to go, and apparently Peter V'landers and Dana White are friendly. I wouldn't say friends, I don't know, but friendly. The key to it was getting Dana White to go, because Dana White went this year. Like I said, he'd probably invite Joe Rogan. You would hope that Joe Rogan would go, and Joe Rogan would bring like Shane Gillis and Tony Hinchcliffe and other guys like that. And then you would think that like next year possibly Trump would go. But yeah, Dana White is busy. I don't know what he's doing. It's not like there's a UFC fight night on the same day, but it's the most boring fight night ever.
Yeah, I saw that. I looked that up, and that's another reason why, you know.
Does he even go? I don't even know if he goes to fight nights. Fight nights are like not important.
So it's not a big fight though, is it? So
no. Fight night is like the ESPN free to air every week. Because UFC has an agreement to do 50 events per year with ESPN. That was one of the reasons they had to get up and running in COVID, because otherwise they weren't getting paid. And so yeah, like the fight nights are like ranked or even unranked competitors fighting each other to try and put on a show so they can then appear on a numbered UFC card, like a pay-per-view, and then like climb up the ranks to try and get title fights. So some of them are good, some of the fight nights are good. This one is not. I'm just having a look at it now. I forgot that I didn't even realise it was on. It was going to be this guy Brendan Hoyval versus Manel Cape, which would have been good, but Hoyval is out, and now it's against, I don't even know this guy, Asu Almabayev. So who cares? And I don't even know if Dana White would be there. It's in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Is it in Las Vegas? I don't know where it is. But yeah, I don't even know if he'd be there, because he doesn't really go to fight nights either. He only goes to championship.
That's the thing, and if he's not going to fight nights, well, he's not going to be going to NRL games.
Well, the next week is UFC 313, which is he might be in the. Where's 313? Well, that's in Las Vegas as well, so he's probably in Las Vegas.
And he still won't go.
Yeah. So yeah, it was stupid. But he was really the key. So maybe next year Dana White can come. Gets Joe Rogan there. Joe Rogan talks about rugby league on the podcast the next week.
See, but at least then, I mean, Trump, he's not going to go next year either, but then at least you could go, well, at least they got time to plan for that.
Yeah.
You got to remember, he's only come into office a month ago. So what are they going to, is the first thing they're going to do when he's inaugurated go, all right, how do we get you to the NRL games in a month's time, Mr. President?
Yeah,
it's just not going to happen.
Not at all.
No.
It's a bit of a publicity stunt, and White Ribbon cancelling their agreement with the NRL is just as big a virtue signalling publicity stunt.
Yeah, and of course, yeah, we don't like to see violence against women or anybody else for that matter. Of course not. But as we've said, there were plenty of other times over their long association with the NRL that they could have pulled out. They could have pulled out at any time, but they choose to do it at they choose a moment where Donald Trump is invited to rugby league games to do it, as opposed to any of the other times they could have done it over the last 2 decades.
It's just because of Donald Trump. It's nothing to do with Donald Trump even being a convicted. I don't know. He's not convicted.
I mean, he's not convicted. It was a civil. It was a civil case. Suit, it wasn't a criminal suit. It was a civil suit.
And a lot of other accusations. But as I said, it's about equal with the Joe Biden accusations. So they don't pull that.
Yeah, and I remember very clearly seeing a video with Joe Biden. I think he was inappropriately touching a woman, and inappropriate because I think she felt. I think he might have touched her on the shoulder or something, but it seemed like she felt uncomfortable with that.
Donald Trump calls him Creepy Joe, or Sleepy Joe, but Creepy Joe.
But that's the thing, and then you go, all right, why didn't White Ribbon make a stand against Joe Biden last year? Where were they last year with Joe Biden?
All these assault allegations from when he was a senator as well. It's like a long history of assault allegations, and they didn't do anything about that. Yeah. So it is totally about Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. Love him or hate him. I have no opinion on him. I just don't like Donald Trump has no effect on me in life. But it doesn't matter who got in because both were going to give me comedy to laugh at. Because American politics creates comedy around the world. I just hate the bullcrap virtue signalling nonsense that goes on around Donald Trump. They should also remember, all these people who think they're on the side of good. What is morally right and what is the side of good is actually just determined by popular vote, and Donald Trump won the popular vote. So all these people who sit there and virtual signal and in America and stuff and go on about how the left is the side of good and the conservatives are the side of evil. Well, there are more people voted for the right, more people voted for Donald Trump. So wouldn't that stand to reason that the left is wrong?
Yeah, well, he got in a democratic election, so
Oh, but it was all Russia. It's always Russia. It's everything in American politics is Russia. That's how American politics and conversations about American politics go. Russia. What's worse than being a Russian spy? Being a racist. What's worse than being a racist? Being a pedophile. So it'll be like, the person you support is a Russian spy. Well, the person you support is a racist. Well, the person you support is a pedophile. That's how they all go, and it's just not everyone is a Russian spy, racist, and pedophiles. All right. If everybody is a Russian spy, I don't know what Russia's doing. Really. So it was all Russia. Meanwhile, in Vegas, Morgan Smithies and Hudson Young have. This is a bit of a G up, and I know Ricky Stewart's going to use it as a massive excuse that the media. Well, Russian spies set this up when the Raiders lose. Yeah. But Morgan Smithies and Hudson Young almost got kicked out of their hotel for having an inflatable baseball bat and a wrestle in an elevator where they accidentally bumped emergency button. What the?
Yeah, and what I found interesting was that I saw a headline on the those. Obviously, you do the shorts they have on the Daily Telegraph website, those video shorts. And on one of the shorts, it had Buzz Rothfield, and the headline was Buzz, Raiders pair foolish but a 2 out of 10 scandal. So because it's the Raiders, it's a 2 out of 10 scandal. Because again, this Ricky Stewart protection racket, where everything the Raiders do is great, even though they never win premierships. But because Ricky Stewart's the coach, we've got to put a positive spin on everything the Raiders do. So the positive spin in this instance is, it's no big deal, it's only 2 out of 10 on the scandal radar. Bear in mind that if any other club had done this, Buzz Rothfield would be saying it's a 10 out of 10 scandal and it's a crisis and all that other rubbish he goes on with where everything else is a crisis. But because it's the Raiders and because he protects Ricky Stewart all the time, all of a sudden, it's only a 2 out of 10 scandal.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's a bit of a G up. It's such a weird thing. But all that aside, whether you think it's a 2 out of 10 scandal or a G up or the most worst thing that's ever happened, the simple fact is it shouldn't happen. They're 9 days out for a game. I hate this. Like, the justification that I've seen all over the place is, two 20-year-olds go out for a drink. It's the worst thing ever. But they're professional athletes,
and they're not there. They're not going to Vegas for a holiday.
Yeah.
If they want a holiday in Vegas, go do it after the season finishes. Go do your off-season trip to Vegas while you're on holiday. They're not in Las Vegas for a holiday. They're in Las Vegas to win a football game.
Exactly. There's some culture in the rugby league and probably in the AFL too, of like, the team bonding session is we go out for a drink or whatever as we prepare, even 9 days out from a match. One of the guys at my gym pointed it out to me. When a fighter goes into a camp, now fighters fight on average 2 to 3 times a year, okay? And a camp is between 6 and 8 weeks long. So they're training all the time. Okay, but when they've got a fight coming up, for 6 to 8 weeks, they are the picture of perfect health. They don't drink. They eat really healthy. They usually have a nutritionist managing all of their food. They manage their weight. They manage their exercise. They manage their training sessions. They manage everything. Rugby league players play every week. Okay? So they should be in camp every week, in my opinion. You can go on all you want about how, they're just young lads and they're just 20 years old. When you were 20, you went out and got drunk. Yeah, I wasn't a professional sports player getting paid for hundreds of thousands of dollars a year.
Yeah, that's right.
I wasn't representing our country and our code in Las Vegas trying to grow the game around the world. I was when I was 20, I was working in a computer store. No, actually... 2000, so I was working in a pizza shop. You can't compare me being a 20-year-old to them being a 20-year-old. If I was a rugby league coach, I would ban alcohol.
Yeah, and I mean, and they haven't been there that long either. They only got there. They only got there. I think they only got there a week ago. They had like a little bit over a week in Vegas. These teams. It's not like they've been there. Not that would excuse it either. But it's not like they've been there for 3 or 4 weeks or anything. They've only been there for about a week and a bit over a week leading into the game. So this is not some booze up trip. This is them going there to do their job, which as a professional footballer is to win a game of football. They're there to win the game of football and then come back and get ready for a big season of footy. They're not there for a Las Vegas drink up with their mates.
No. It's such a weird thing as more and more of the story becomes more and more of the story unfolds. Like, there wasn't any malice in their wrestling. It was originally reported that there was a baseball bat involved, but it ended up being an inflatable baseball bat. All it was there was a booking issue with the room, and they decided to wrestle over who should get the bed. They accidentally bumped an emergency thingy in the elevator. Nobody actually did anything, apparently. Like, the security didn't even come, nothing. And it wasn't until they went downstairs to just, try and sort out their room that then security approached and said, hey, we saw you wrestling in the elevator, you have to leave. Then the NRL or Raiders management went and talked to the hotel and sorted it all out and got them a room with a bed each.
Yeah.
Like, it's not what the story is irrelevant though. Like Buzz Rossfield's, it's a 2 out of 10 scandal. Every scandal is just stupidity, and it's not hard to go out and not be an idiot when you're a professional athlete getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Yeah.
Let me tell you, if it's any other club, Buzz Rothfield's saying, this is a 10 out of 10 crisis, scandal, this is an outrage, that's what he'd be saying. But because it's the Raiders, and because he's best mates with Ricky Stewart, this is all right, this is just a 2 out of 10 scandal.
Yeah, because realistically, if it was not a couple of rugby league players, it wouldn't be a scandal at all, right? If it was just a couple of dudes, it wouldn't be a scandal at all. But the simple fact is, they're over in Las Vegas. They're getting paid by the NRL for their trip, or maybe by the Raiders or whatever. Free trip to Vegas to play sport. They get paid a lot of money. They're supposed to be preparing for a game. If you look at what happened last year to the 4 teams that went there, remember, they all had a Vegas hangover.
Yeah.
The Sea Eagles managed it better at the beginning, but then faded. All 4 teams that went to Vegas last year had a Vegas hangover.
Yeah, well, look at the Broncos. They made the grand final the year before. They go to Vegas and then they miss the 8.
Yeah,
this is a team that made the grand final the year before.
So any coach should be being really strict about what they're doing and trying to manage this trip. And then you have them all going out and getting on the piss and having, let's have a wrestle over the bed, ha 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 ha. It's not hard to not be an idiot,
Yeah, and the Rabbitohs went to Vegas last year, and look how they went. They came second last last year.
Yeah.
They had a terrible season.
Roosters recovered, but, and ended up being in the top 4.
Well, they made the prelim, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was just going to make another comment on this. I saw this on a report. I saw this reported. This is a line out of the report. It talks about Michael Chammas, the journalist, talking about the Raiders. It says, Chammas, who lauded the Raiders for, quote, a lesson in crisis management to clubs who have often prioritised the protection of players over the good of the game in their clubs. What? Why is it whenever the Raiders and Ricky Stewart are involved, there's this lovely praise of how they handle everything? Yet again, this protection of Ricky Stewart from the media. The players only went out there and apologised when they knew it was going to blow up in the media. They wanted to keep it quiet initially. They were hoping the media wouldn't get hold of it. It took the media, the reporters over there, a few days to get a hold of this story. And it was only once they knew it was going to blow up that they thought, all right, well, the best strategy now is to get on the front foot and apologise because, well, what choice do you have at that point? If you know it's going to blow up, you have to get on the front foot and apologise. But originally they were hoping that it would just be kept out of the papers and that reporters wouldn't get hold of it. I bet after 3 days they thought we might be a chance of keeping this quiet here and it not getting out. So this idea that it was some PR masterstroke from Ricky Stewart, that's a load of nonsense again, and yet again we get an example of Ricky Stewart being protected by the media.
Yeah, they, what is it called? But yeah, like I said, at the very beginning, it's given Ricky Stewart a free get out for if the Raiders lose.
Yeah.
Because the media ruined us with their...
Yeah. And the Vegas excuse is already locked in for Ricky Stewart. If the Raiders are struggling in the first 6 or 8 weeks, all his mates in the media are going to be saying, oh, yeah, but they've come off the Vegas game, there's a bit of a hangover from that. And they'll use it all year. Even if the Raiders are in the bottom 4 at the end of the year, they'll say, oh, yeah, but they started the year in Vegas, they had a bit of a hangover,
Yeah, exactly.
He's got his excuses laid out on a platter already. Yeah. He's very smart like that. I'll give him that. Well, he's good at planning the excuses in advance.
That's how he's stayed at the Raiders.
That's how he's survived. As he said, he's going into his 12th season as Raiders coach. No premierships yet, but yet he gets re-signed until the end of 2029.
Yeah, exactly. Sacked Fox commentator Corey Parker reckons the Queensland NRL team should have played in Vegas.
Yes.
Why?
He's basically saying, it was all happening this time last year with the Broncos a part of it. He's saying, it doesn't have the same vibe this year. I'm not sure if it's because there's no Queensland team involved, but it has to be a factor. And he's talking about, there's 3 other Queensland teams now other than the Broncos who could have gone. It's like, yeah, Corey, but there are 17 NRL teams, okay? Queensland teams only make up 4 of the 17 clubs, okay? He needs to understand that the world doesn't revolve around Queensland. And when there's a game in Las Vegas, I'm sorry, Corey, but we're not all thinking, where's Queensland's representation in this? There are 13 clubs outside of the Queensland clubs who also want to go to Vegas as well here. The world doesn't revolve around Queensland as much as people like Corey Parker want it to.
The vibe is that there's going to be more people there, actually. Apparently, they've got 9,000 English fans travelling there for that St Helens game, although did Sam Burgess end up getting a visa?
I think he did, yeah. To be honest, didn't you think... I thought that story was blown up. I mean, I don't... He's coaching a Super League club. Who cares, And he ended up getting the visa anyway. I talk about stories getting blown up. I didn't care about that story at all.
Last year there was, it's not. Last year they had visa issues with some players, so they had to replicate the story.
It's just, I just looked at that and went, all right, if he doesn't go, he doesn't go. Who cares? It's one game and he's a Super League coach now. Who cares?
Yeah, look, apparently there's 9,000 English fans going. They've already sold 17,000 tickets to Australian fans from Australia. It's sold more tickets than it did last year, so I don't think really not having a Queensland team there made that much of a difference. Like, what is he trying to say? They would have sold 50,000 tickets if the Queensland team was in it? They would have had more people watching the games?
Yeah, so the NRL goes to Las Vegas for a doubleheader to open the season, and the first thing that comes into Corey Parker's mind is, why isn't there a Queensland team there?
Well, there's going to be
the world doesn't revolve around Queensland as much as Queenslanders would like it to.
There's going to be one next year. So apparently the Titans will be in next year. I don't know.
And you're talking about the Titans. Well, this is another quote from Corey Parker. He says, the Gold Coast will be known to the people of Las Vegas because it's a holiday destination for Americans. Come on. Americans don't care. What? You think that cabinet meeting that Elon Musk and Donald Trump were at, you think they were talking to each other going, by the way, do you think Trump said to Elon Musk, by the way, Elon, wouldn't it have been great if there was a Queensland team playing in Vegas this year at the NRL doubleheader? Yeah, I don't think they were talking about that somehow.
No, nobody even would have noticed.
People in the US couldn't care less about Australia. Let's just be honest about that. They'd have no interest in this NRL doubleheader. Most of them wouldn't even know what the game is, let alone care which teams are playing.
Well, they had a couple of games. America was going to play Greece in like some warm-up games.
Yeah, and didn't the lights didn't work or something?
Had to cancel the first game. And the 17 fans. Donald Trump didn't even go watch Americans play the game, man. Like, Americans weren't even going to watch America play. They're not going to go and watch. The game is for Aussies, expats, people to travel there. It's not really for the American crowd. And as we discussed last year, it's for betting.
Yeah, and I'd imagine that. If you talk to most Americans about Australia, most of them would probably only be able to name one city in Australia, and that would be Sydney. I would say. Yeah. I don't think they would. Most of them wouldn't even be able to name any other place in Australia.
Maybe the Great Barrier Reef.
Maybe the Great Barrier Reef.
If that's not a place.
Yeah, well, it's a. What would you call the Great Barrier Reef?
It's a landmark.
Yeah, landmark, a feature. Yeah.
Yeah.
But seriously, like that's. No, people in Las Vegas are not sitting there going, where's the Gold Coast team? Yeah, we wanted to see a Gold Coast team.
Even if the Gold Coast were there, people in Las Vegas are not sitting there going, the Gold Coast's going to be in it. Go then.
Well, if you're in Las Vegas, you don't need to go to the Gold Coast because Las Vegas is just an upgraded version of the Gold Coast. Yeah. It's the same thing, a better version of the Gold Coast.
I hate Vegas, but I like it better than the Gold Coast because at least it doesn't have Queenslanders in it.
Yeah, and look, Phil Gould did point, we touched on it before, he did point out that, based off last year's evidence, well, it may not be such a great thing going to Vegas anyway. It could really disrupt your season. It's really not work for one game. It's not, if you're a fan, you're going, look, I don't want to jeopardise my team's performance for a whole season just because of one game in Las Vegas at the start of the season.
Next year, the teams have been leaked, but it's Bulldogs and Dragons to play, and then I think it was Parramatta and the Titans.
Right, well, so the Titans are going next year anyway.
That's the leaked teams, but you don't know because it doesn't get confirmed until well after, so that's the leaked teams right now.
Well, that's the thing, maybe Phil Gould doesn't have the influence at the Bulldogs.
No, I don't think they get a choice actually now. I think the first couple were a choice, but it's going to be different teams. It's going to be different teams every year, and they have 5 years, right? So 3 more years. So they've got to get every team.
So every team's going to have a go.
So you don't have a choice now.
So that makes it all the more ridiculous what Corey Parker said, because they're all going to get a go over the 5 years anyway. So if there's only 4 Queensland teams out of 17, well, yeah, there might be the odd year where there's no Queensland teams.
Well, out of the 5 years, there'll be 1 year where there's no Queensland team there.
Yeah, and this is the year.
Yeah.
So, it'd be nice if Corey Parker could just relax on that one.
But on the upside for Corey Parker, he's getting all the love on the internet.
Yes, he is.
Everybody hates Kevin Walters' commentary. Everybody.
Yes, and this is where we are fair, all right? I just had a crack at Corey Parker, but I will say it again, he's a far better commentator than Kevin Walters. Kevin Walters is as boring a commentator as there is out there. And we've seen evidence of it over the preseason already.
It's unanimous, actually. I haven't seen anyone... I talk about it every now and then, like internet sentiment, where no matter what, there'll always be an argument. But when the arguments are things about grammar or facts about what people say instead of the actual opinion they're presenting, it's because everybody on the internet wants to argue. And they can't argue with what you're saying. So they look for another argument, and no one is arguing with people. People are saying Kevin Walters' commentary sucks, and no one's responding and saying you are wrong. Kevin Walters is good. They're responding and say sucks is spelled S-U-C-K-S. And yeah, it is terrible. I haven't watched any of the preseason, but I've watched some highlights, and the commentary of Kevin Walters is just boring. It reminds me of the Ray Hadley. It's the kind of thing that I would turn off if he was the commentator.
Yeah,
sorry to say Kevin Walters, but
Kevin Walters just and you know what's disappointing is, you know, he's been in a position where he could be a really good commentator now. I mean, he's just come off a coaching gig, so he's got that experience of having coached at the top level very recently, and so he could put those insights to really good use in a commentary role. But he's just not capable of it. It's just boring when he commentates. It's not interesting. It's very dull. He just dishes out cliches all the time, says all the right things, says nothing worth listening to, nothing interesting, as opposed to Corey Parker, who was very entertaining, gave strong opinions all the time, was worth listening to. And, you know, from the point of view of a viewer, if Corey Parker was on like a halftime show or a post-game review show or a preview show, whatever it was, I'd sit there and I'd listen to everything he says because he'd have something interesting to say. But as you said, if Kevin Walters is on one of those shows, well, then that's where you go and make yourself a cup of tea or go to the bathroom, or your attention goes elsewhere, away from the TV when Kevin Walters is on, because it's just boring.
Yeah, exactly. As I said, if he's my commentator, I might turn off. No offense, Kevy, but that's just the way it is, bro. Bring back Corey Parker, and I'm sure you'll see improvement. Well, I reckon what will happen is Corey Parker will get a job as well.
You reckon they'll rehire him?
Yeah, but like not get rid of Kevin Walters. But
well, I don't know why they. I mean, if they wanted, obviously they wanted Kevin Walters so badly for some reason. I don't know why. But why didn't they just do that in the first instance? I mean, you know, they've got deep pockets. It's not as if they can't afford to have both. No. It just didn't really make sense. But yeah, he's now got that full-time breakfast radio gig with SEN in Queensland, Corey Parker, and that's where he, you know, makes the odd ridiculous comment like, oh, we need a Queensland team playing in Las Vegas this year. Yeah.
Put people in front of a microphone, they'll always say something stupid. This podcast is the case. According to the internet. Now,
it's a good thing I don't read those comments.
Yeah, the Broncos won the preseason challenge, and I read an interesting stat. You know, every team that has won the preseason challenge has missed the top 8, and every team that has come last in the preseason challenge has made the top 8. So the Broncos won the preseason challenge for the second year in a row. They got paid $100,000.
Yes.
And the minor premiers get $200,000.
Yeah. So how does that work?
That's $200,000 has been the same for like 20 years. When is that going to increase? I mean, I remember there was a few teams that wanted to put a clause into their contracts that if teams won the minor premierships, then the players would get the money. But then the NRL was like, that's part of the salary cap, so you'll have to reduce everyone's salary. Yeah, and what the NRL don't understand is apparently they put the $100,000 prize there for winning the preseason challenge, I guess, as an added incentive for teams to pick their best players in these games. But what they need to realise about that is coaches, that's not going to make coaches pick
their star players in these games, because coaches, by doing that, coaches are putting their own jobs at risk. If Manly played Tom Trbojevic in one of these games and he goes down with a season-ending injury, well, there goes Anthony Seibold's job. Yeah. So obviously Anthony Seibold is not going to pick Tom Trbojevic in one of these trial games. Likewise, Benji Marshall is not going to pick Jerome Luai in one of these trial games, because if Jerome Luai goes down with a season-ending injury, well, there goes Benji Marshall's job. $100,000 prize is not going to make these coaches pick their best players in these games.
To be honest, I don't even think the clubs, $100,000 will make the clubs encourage the coaches to pick the prize, because I remember, what was his name? Peter Dust. I remember an interview with him many years ago where he was talking about the financial gain from winning a premiership is much more vast than the gain you get from winning like a minor premiership and things like that. And like I said, it seems to have been the $200,000 for the past 20 years. But the clubs would want the coaches to... clubs all want the coaches to work towards winning a premiership, because that results in a jump in numbers for the next year. Promotional gear sales, jersey sales, like everything. I don't even think the $200,000 matters to them, especially because they get like a $12 million grant or whatever it is from the NRL. If they really wanted people to put their best players in that preseason challenge, it'd have to be $1 million. Like, what is that? The Nines or whatever they played that 1 year, that had $1 million prize, and all the best players in the league were in it, because every club was like, dude, go win me that $1 million. Yeah. Like, I want the $1 million. Yeah. Like, the $100,000 is going to do nothing for them.
No.
Because when you compare $100,000 to the amount of money you make from winning a premiership, it's just not worth it. Like you said, Tom Trbojevic goes down. That's the end of Manly's season. That's the end of Seibold's job. Yeah. The club know it, so they're not going to go to Anthony Seibold and go, you got to play Tom Trbojevic to win us that $100,000. Yeah. Because you got to go play Tom Trbojevic to win that $100,000, and there's a massive risk that we'll miss out on the millions of dollars we'll make from winning a premiership.
And that's the thing. Like, obviously, the coach is the one who wears the brunt of the result more than any other official at the club, but the other officials wear it too. You know, the CEO wears it too, and other executives wear the results too, the chairman, etc. So they're not going to be saying to Anthony Seibold, you have to play Tom Trbojevic so we get that $100,000. Or same with the West Tigers, they're not going to be going to Benji Marshall saying, you have to play Jerome Luai so we can have a shot at that $100,000. No, because while the coach is the one who gets sacked first, over the long term, well, they're judged on the results of the team as well. So they want what's in the best interest of first-grade team performance as well, which is not playing them in these meaningless pre-season games and keeping them fresh for the season proper.
Yeah, and Adam O'Brien had a big... did you see the Adam O'Brien interview about the pre-season?
I didn't know. What did he say?
He got asked... What is it? He got asked... I was looking for the quote. Here we go. Fox League's Nico Pajarillo. One of the questions he asked whether it will be Tyson Campbell or Jack Cogger partnering Fletcher Sharp to start the season, and Adam O'Brien responded really angrily, I don't know, that's what trials are for.
Well, that's a fair point, right?
He was like really angry about it.
Yeah, well, I'm with Adam O'Brien on that, because
that's the thing.
Because it's true.
Like, no one is going to try and win the $100,000 because that's what trials are for.
Yeah, that's actually the perfect answer from Adam O'Brien to say, well, I don't know. That's why we're using these trials to to gauge who's best suited to the position.
They're not chasing the $100,000. And it's, you had the Dragons won the Charity Shield, so 30,000 grand final tickets were sold to Dragons fans. Because when the Dragons win the grand finals, the Dragons fans run out and buy grand final tickets. But Wayne Bennett rarely ever won the Charity Shield, man. He just doesn't take it seriously. And when he was at the Dragons, he didn't take it seriously, and the Dragons got smashed in the Charity Shield. When he went to the Rabbitohs, the Rabbitohs got smashed in the Charity Shield. He's back at the Rabbitohs now, and they got smashed in the Charity Shield.
Yeah. Look, if I was the coach, I wouldn't play any of my star players in these pre-season games, because it's not worth it. If you get to choose between having your players a bit underdone going into round one or risk them being injured in a pre-season trial game, I'm taking the underdone in round one every day of the week. I don't want these players getting injured in a meaningless trial game.
Yeah, not for $100,000. It's all to, test your depth, really. That's why there's 25 people on the bench as well, and you got unlimited interchanges and all that stuff. Like, players will play 4 minutes.
Yeah, like teams play 24 games in the regular season. Unfortunately, that's a lot of opportunities for them to get injured in the regular season. They don't want to add. They don't want to create additional opportunities for their players to get injured by playing them in 2 meaningless pre-season games.
Exactly. And after the Broncos won, Reece Walsh was interviewed about his combination with Ben Hunt, who, man, there's a lot of back and forth between Ben Hunt's friends and Shane Flanagan in the media right now. And I thought it was pretty funny, actually. So he made a hilarious crack, which people are saying was a crack at Shane Flanagan. It's so obvious it was.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny, man.
Yeah, I'll just explain it. So Shane Flanagan made some comments about Ben Hunt. He said, and I quote, "Ben was a good player, but he was getting older and he had a few bad habits as well," end quote. That's what Shane Flanagan said. And after that pre-season win that the Broncos had over the Bulldogs the other day, Reece Walsh took a bit of a dig at Shane Flanagan and said Hunt has, quote, "still got some bad habits in his game," which was obviously, end quote. That's obviously a clear reference to the comments that Flanagan made about Ben Hunt. But what I would say to that, though, is, Reece, it's only a trial game, okay? You're very quick. I know it's good natured, and I know it's a bit of fun, and it's a bit of a laugh. But it is only a trial game. So let's see how Ben Hunt goes.
Yeah.
And I think to be fair, I think he will go well for the Broncos. I think he's more suited to being around that stronger roster than what he was at the Dragons. And I think he'll be far more suited there than he was at the Dragons. But just hold your horses, Reece Walsh. It is only a trial game. Let's see how things go in the season.
I think the Broncos are going to struggle at the early season with Ben Hunt and Adam Reynolds. I know Mitchell Pearce was on last week and said he'd play them both in the halves with Ben Hunt at 6. But I think they're going to struggle with those two players as their halves. What I believe will happen is if one of them goes down injured, then they'll improve. And when Ezra Mam comes back and can slot in with Adam Reynolds and they move Ben Hunt to 9, it'll be better. But I think Adam Reynolds and Ben Hunt will clash. Not like personality-wise, but I think style-wise, I think they'll clash in the halves. I don't think their styles are suited to each other. They play too similar. And they're both, when they're in the halves, dominant playmakers.
Yeah, okay. I don't want to contradict myself because I do have them, in a good finishing position when we get to talking about our ladder.
No, but I think they'll come better in the end of the season. Like, remember, Ezra Mam's out for 9 weeks.
He is, yeah.
And he'll come back in and he'll slot back into that 5/8 role. He's not going to play any other position, right? No. And that's when they'll have to come good. We'll get to the ladders soon, but yeah, I think the Broncos are a risk because of that. I think they're probably going to go poorly for the first 9 weeks, and then they'll have to improve. And depending on the outcomes of other games and how well other teams are going, is going to be a big factor. Like if they go on a 10-game winning streak, they'll make the 8.
Yeah.
But they're going to have that second half of the season that they're going to have to do everything they can.
And look, and I know it's easy to forget this quickly after just one pre-season, performance, that win they had over the Bulldogs, the Broncos. But let's not forget that you can see where Shane Flanagan's coming from on Ben Hunt. That they haven't made the finals since 2018, the Dragons, and that was Ben Hunt's first season at the club. And he was at the Dragons up until the end of last season. So from 2019 to 2024, the Dragons didn't make the 8 with Ben Hunt as the chief playmaker. So you can understand why Shane Flanagan grew frustrated with him. You can understand why he's talking about the bad habits in his game when he couldn't deliver them a top 8 appearance over that long period of time. So as I said, only one top 8 appearance for the Dragons with Ben Hunt at the club, and that was back in 2018, his first season there.
He was on a reported somewhere between 800,000 and 1.2 million. When he was at the club, everyone was all like, he's on 1.1 million. When he left the club, it was like, well, he's freed up $800,000 in our salary cap. where did the other $400,000 go?
Yeah.
Why have you been talking about how he's on over $1 million for the past 5 years, and when he leaves, he's only on 800,000? Yeah.
Yeah. Where'd that missing money go?
But over to the Panthers.
Yes.
Phil Gould's club.
Yeah.
You know, he's always got opinions on the Panthers that he built and helped them win 4 premierships.
Yeah, he likes to remind everybody, and he likes everybody to think that he's had a lot to do with the 4 premierships that have happened after he left the club. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's reckons Blaize Talagi should be the 5'8" for the Panthers.
Yes.
I don't know, who was the 5'8" in the trials?
Well, it is. I'm just
Snyder.
Just having a look here. It's Jack Cole has been named to partner Nathan Cleary in the halves for this Las Vegas game. So Blaize Talagi's been overlooked for that 5'8" spot. Some quotes from Phil Gould on Blaize Talagi. He says they bought Blaize Talagi for a reason. Blaize Talagi has gone to the Panthers to play 5'8", to play with Nathan Cleary and to replace Jerome Luai. Not sure what the Panthers' mindset is with that, but I can't see why they wouldn't do that. I can't see why they can't start Blaize Talagi straight away. I think the sooner they settle on that, the better. He's gone there to play 5'8", and I'd be surprised if they don't play him 5'8" from the get-go, but it's still a strong side. Now,
isn't he injured though?
I think he's had an injury that's sort of disrupted his preparation.
That was one of the things, like he had to come over to the Panthers and have surgery and...
Yeah, he has had an injury over
shoulder.
the course of the off-season,
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, Ivan Cleary must look at it and go, look, Gus, we don't need advice from you. We've won the last 4 premierships in a row. Maybe you should stay in your lane and look after your own club here, rather than tell us what to do. And that's the thing. He's the general manager of football at another club, Phil Gould, and he seems to be very happy to hand out advice to other clubs. Still speaks with authority on Penrith as if he's had anything to do with this run of 4 premierships there, which, as I said before, has happened since he left the club, and yet he's still very happy to claim credit for it.
Well, Panthers are heavy favourites. Oh, by the way, you know what happened with our last week's podcast? I think we talked about Donald Trump too much and we might get in trouble. We got flagged by YouTube for influencing American politics, just so you know.
Oh, wow. I didn't know we had that sort of an influence.
Pretty proud of that. But I bring it up because, you know, we can't talk about the odds. But the Panthers are currently the favourites with the bookmakers to win. However, in the SmartB...
Sorry, you know when you say we can't talk about the odds, we can't just mention the...
I don't know. Nobody knows. It's YouTube. They don't tell you.
So we're just trying...
First of all, our last episode got flagged for having shocking content. And we appealed that.
Okay.
And then it got flagged again for influencing American politics.
You can't please everybody, right?
But so the bookmakers have the Sharks pretty handy favourites. Mm-hmm. But in the SmartB tipping comps, don't forget everybody, we'll get to asking, but sign up for SmartB tipping comps for your chance to win $10,000. The 51% of people are currently tipping the Panthers with 49 tipping the Sharks. Yesterday it was the other way around. 52% of people were tipping the Sharks. So people think it's going to be pretty close. Bookmakers less so, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can see, you know, you could see the Sharks winning that game. I mean, Dylan Edwards and Nathan Cleary have been named in the Panthers side, but they've both carried injuries into the new season as well. So you can see the Panthers making a slow start. Yeah, absolutely, you can. And the Sharks, they're a very good regular season team. They are. They've always been that way. And you can see them getting off to a really good start. So, yeah, I wouldn't be at all surprised if the Sharks win that game to start the season.
I think the Panthers will get it, but I wouldn't be surprised. I think the funniest stat is that everyone thinks the Warriors are winning. It's like 82% of people are tipping the Warriors. No one thinks the Raiders can win.
Yeah, we will get to some of those pre-season predictions a little bit later.
But
pretty soon, yeah.
Brent Read has said the Panthers should not be premiership favourites.
Yeah.
I don't see why not. I get this a lot, man. Like, everyone tells me the Panthers are no chance. And I keep telling them, you've said that every year. You know, everyone has said that every year. And then they'll list the names of the people they've lost. Oh, but they lost Fisher Harris. Yeah. He was the engine room. He was the heart of that forward pack. Man, 4 years ago, you know who was the heart of the forward pack? Kicker. Was it 3 years ago? Whenever it was. They lost him. It made no difference. Doesn't matter who they lose.
This is the thing. I mean, they've lost, Jerome Luai, of course, gone to the West Tigers, and they've lost prop James Fisher Harris as well. Some quotes from Brent Read, which I didn't understand, was he says, and I quote, "No, they aren't favourites. No way they should be favourites." Brent, they have won the last 4 premierships in a row. So to say no way they should be favourites, I mean, come on here. Yeah, I think a team that's won 4 premierships in a row could be classed as premiership favourites. I don't think there'd be any real problem with that. That's an odd thing to say. Look, that having been said, I do agree with him overall in that I think the Storm are the favourites to win the premiership. And I'm tipping them. Basically, I think the way it went last year was the Panthers and the Storm were way ahead of every other team. I still think they're way ahead of every other team, but I just think they're going to swap positions this year. I think the Storm will win the premiership, and I think they'll beat the Panthers in the grand final. But that having been said, I wouldn't be talking like Brent Read saying, "Oh, there's no way the Panthers should be favourites." Hello, they've won 4 straight premierships, Brent. So you can see why they'd be why some would think they're favourites. I just don't. I think the Melbourne are, but I think Penrith will make the grand final.
Just FYI, they're not the favourites. Melbourne are the favourites. Bookies from the bookies. And, you know, some people will say Panthers will win, like they'll be favourites personally, but in reality, Melbourne are the favourites. I think,
true. I just don't get why he's saying no way they should be favourites. Like, they have won 4 in a row,
exactly
Brent Read.
Right. Just FYI, Melbourne are the favourites, but that doesn't count Panthers out at all.
No.
You know who were the favourites last year? Panthers. You know who were second favourites? Melbourne.
Yeah.
You know, so...
I just think 2 teams that were that far ahead of everyone else last year... Well, there's no reason to think at this very early stage, or we haven't even started the season yet, well, you'd have to think that they're going to be the top 2 again because there's still a big gap between them and all the other sides.
Exactly. I think, well, okay, so we can get into our ladders now. I forgot to get PCs, so I'll get it. I actually forgot to put my ladder down, and I did it this morning. You want to start from the bottom?
Yeah. So should we both name it as we go?
Yeah. Who you got for 17?
Okay. Our friends at the Raiders.
Me too.
So we're on a unity ticket on that one.
It's funny because last year you named the Tigers and got that right. So
yeah, that might have been
You can't batting 100% on tipping the spoon. So.
Well, there you go. I've got good form tipping the spoon then. So, I maybe... Yeah, we'll see how we go on that one. But, so we're on a unity ticket on that one, eh?
I just can't see them going well. For 17th, I've got the Dolphins.
You mean 16th?
16th, sorry. I'll just have to put my numbers down so I can read properly. 16th, I've got the Dolphins. I think Wayne Bennett is leaving and has probably torn them apart. And it's going to ruin them. I think history shows that it doesn't matter how good... If Wayne Bennett says this coach will be able to survive it, all that means is they're fighting for the wooden spoon the next year.
Okay, well, I'm going with the Knights in second last.
You're going to get hammered, bro.
Yeah, well, they are very vocal. They're the ones who are hammering us, aren't they, on social media?
Yeah.
But I guess you just got to think, like, we do a podcast where we give strong opinions. People are going to react to that.
Yeah.
That just comes with the territory of doing this. I think they'll come second last. I will cop it for that, but that's all right. That's fine. I just think they got too much money tied up in Kalen Ponga, and that's affecting their recruitment in other areas. And the problem with that is they really lack depth in other positions I can't see them having a good season this year. I know they've made the finals a few times in recent years, but
4 times in the last 5 years. Also 4 times in the last 11 years.
Yeah, that's the thing. But when they make it, they only scrape in. And I think the problem with that is, I think the problem with them scraping into the 8 is it papers over their problems. So they never address their core problems because they're meaningless top 8 finishes where they scrape into the 8 and get knocked out straight away. Papers over the cracks, and they don't address their issues. They just continue along hoping that Kalen Ponga will get the job done for them all the time.
This excuse of 4 times in the last 5 years nonsense is nonsense, because it's like, when did you last win a premiership? When did you last even look like you were going to win a premiership is actually a better question. Because even though the Broncos, for example, haven't won since 2006, they looked like they were going to win a premiership 2 years ago. Even though the Roosters haven't won since 2019, they haven't looked like they're going to win one. So that's why we always talk about, like, yes, Trent Robinson's Roosters are making the finals and sometimes the top 4, but they don't look like they're going to win.
No, and they got that terrible record against the Panthers and the Storm where they've only won one of their last 21 against those two
when
teams.
have the Knights even looked like they were going to win a premiership or even come close?
No, well, not since they last won one in 2001.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
For 15th, I've got Jason Riles as Eels.
Okay, yep.
And you?
Yeah, I'm sorry to say, but I've gone for your Dragons.
Oh, poor Dragons.
I've gone for them at 15th, I'm sorry to say.
Yeah.
Look, I just think, I know they've picked up a few players.
Still favourites for the spoon, though.
I know they've got, they've picked up Clint Gutherson, they've picked up Valentine Holmes, they picked up Damien Cook as well. I know they've picked up some players.
Bro, they dominated the Rabbitohs in the Charity Shield. Get grand final tickets. Pre-order your premiership t-shirts.
Yeah. Look, I think, in the long term, I still think Shane Flanagan's the man for the job there. And I think he will eventually bring them back into premiership contention. But I think he needs a lot more time. And we talked about Ben Hunt. Look, Ben Hunt, we've said it, he's not the player who gets you into the top 8. But look, if Ben Hunt had been there, I probably would have had them at 10th or 11th rather than 15th. I think he does make a difference, not enough of a difference to get them into the 8, evidently. And so that's why I think they are on the right track, because they've let him go and now the door's open for them to recruit someone else who will do that. But I still think they're in that transition phase, and I think they've got a bit of pain ahead this year. But over the long term, I think they will be better off.
A lot of people are tipping them to beat the Dragons the Bulldogs in round 1. So maybe
well, they might. And look, then you can, then I'll have egg on my face, and you can laugh at me after the game.
And 14th, I got the Cowboys.
Yep.
I just think they're on a full downward slide. I know I tipped them to miss the 8 last year as well, but I just think they're on a massive downward slide as an entire club, to be honest.
You on the Cowboys?
Yeah.
14th? Yeah, okay. Look, I've gone the Titans.
Desi can't get them up.
Yeah, there's just not enough going on there recruitment-wise.
Yeah, they only have... That's the thing with the Titans, right? They only have... what's his name? David Fafita and Tino. Big Tino. And then the rest of their team is who?
And that's the thing. To be honest, I can't believe that Kieran Foran's still playing. Because
oh my God, he's here.
That's the thing, because the battering that his body has copped over the years, I don't know how he's still standing. I think it's a phenomenal effort for him to still be playing in the NRL.
Calf's blood.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I just don't think they've done enough on the
recruitment
on the recruitment front. The only signing they've made is Regan Campbell-Gillard from Parramatta. It's a handy pickup, but it's not going to make a whole lot of difference.
Yeah, that's
really.
one of the reasons why I have the Eels so low as well, because they've lost a lot of their experience. 13th, I've got the Warriors. I think they're that 2 year ago run where, what's his name? Andrew Webster?
Yes.
Andrew Webster got the most improved coach.
Yeah.
Was when the Warriors were still playing out of Australia. And now they're back to travelling back and forth between New Zealand. So
you think they were better off when they were playing in Australia?
100%.
Interesting theory.
Because the travel even though, like, Ricky Stewart wants to whine about his 40,000 kilometre travels or whatever he's got to do. If you remember a few weeks ago, he had that complaint setting the Raiders up for failure up front. Warriors have to do the most intercontinental travel out of every team.
Yeah.
And flying back and forth over the ocean is incredibly difficult.
Yeah, that's right. And look, and so I think we're up to 13th. You said.
Yeah, 13th.
Yeah. I'm on a unity ticket with you on this one. I've gone the Warriors 13th as well. Look, they've picked up James Fisher-Harris, but I think they need a lot more than that. There's still a lot of gaps in their recruitment. He will help, but not to the point where they're going to make the finals this year, I don't think.
And at 12th, I've got your 16th place Knights.
Okay.
I think, I can't see him making the 8, especially if Kalen Pong is back to representative football. I think that'll, high risk of injury, high risk of them. They still don't know who their halves are. That's what trials are for. But every other team in the league knows who their halves are. And the Knights haven't known who their halves are for the past 3 years.
Partly because they got too much salary cap tied up in Kalen Ponga.
Yeah, so I don't see them making the 8 this year. I think Adam Bryan will also probably be the first coach sacked. But I thought that for the past 3 years. That guy walks
and then Kalen Ponga rescues him.
Yeah, that's he walks on a knife's edge at all points, Adam O'Brien. So who's your 12th?
So we're at
12th.
Yeah. So have you had the Tigers yet? Have you named them?
No.
You haven't. Yeah. So I've got the Tigers at 12th spot. I think they will improve with Jerome Luai there. Absolutely. I don't think it'll be enough to get them into the top 8, but I don't think they'll come last, and I think they'll avoid a bottom 4 finish. This is a high calibre footballer who's played at 5/8 in the last 4 straight premierships with the Panthers. And I think
Origin.
Yeah, 100%. I think a player of his experience is just going to be huge for their club, and I think it's going to be enough to get them up into 12th position. And just having a look at some of their other gains as well. Terrell May, they've got him as well. They've got a bit of beef up front. Sunia Taruva, he comes out of the very strong Panthers system as well. Jarrell Skelton, he was a handy pickup from the Bulldogs. They got some experience with Jack Bird from the Dragons as well. So I think some handy recruitment there from the Tigers, and I think they avoid the spoon this year.
I got the West Tigers at 11th, so I had the exact same thing. I think the pickup of Terrell May jumps them up the ladder. Finally gives them they haven't had a big power forward that can be the engine of the heart of the forward pack since what was that British guy's name? Gareth Ellis.
Yeah,
Gareth Ellis. He was their last real, heart and soul of the forward pack, and I think Terrell May can become that for him, jump him up to 11th. As said, I don't think they can make the 8. But all those pickups will certainly rocket them up and give them a couple of years, and maybe Benji Marshall will be the first coach that can get him into the 8. So who you got at 11th?
11, I've gone for the Dolphins. I just think they've lost Jesse Bromwich. He's retired. I think that's a big out for them. And just nothing. They got Daniel Saifidi. But nothing really else to speak of on the recruitment front there, and so I can't see him making the 8. Jesse Bromwich is a huge out for
them.
They're
also already lacking in depth. That's why another reason I had them so low at 16th, because they're lacking in depth. And the fact that they lost such, basically some of their best players with no depth and no replacement, get a couple of injuries in there, they're not going to go well. Throw in the fact that Wayne Bennett tears teams apart when he leaves. Yeah, so much so that he has to return to clean up his mess at the Rabbitohs. And then at 10th, I've got the Titans. I think the Desi will get them up this year. But not enough for the 8. They're in a whole world of mess that needs to be cleaned up over the course of a few years.
But then again, I guess 10th for them, that actually wouldn't be a bad result. I think if they were to come 10th, I think Desi's done a good job there.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to. But how about you?
10th, I'm going for the Rabbitohs. I just think I think they'll improve on last year. I think Bennett will improve them, but not enough to make the 8. They've had some players leave the club. Tom Burgess has gone to Huddersfield. Damien Cook's gone to the Dragons. So some players have left the club there. Jacob Gagai's gone as well. And just not a whole lot really to speak of on the gains front. I mean, they've got Ewan Aitken. And they got Lewis Dodd from St Helens as well.
Ewan Aitken is Wayne Bennett's new son. He replaced Darius Boyd.
Yeah, right. Okay. Another son for Wayne Bennett,
the third time he's played with Wayne Bennett.
Yeah, and I mean, I know they got Josh Schuster. I mean, who knows how he's going to go. He could do anything. Who knows?
Mental problems are over and stuff. So
I think Bennett improves them on last year. But I think that they're still not going to make the 8. And, of course, those injury blows, we'll get to Latrell Mitchell a bit later. He's actually gone for a couple of months now, and Cam Murray gone for most of the season, if not all season. Huge injury blows as well that are going to hurt them as well. So they improve for me, but not enough to make the 8.
And at 9th, I have the Broncos. The 8th and 9th was my hardest one.
Okay.
As I outlined before, I think Ezra Mam, I think they're going to struggle at the beginning of the season with their halves combination. Both of the guys are quality halves, but I don't think they're suited to play together. Because one of the halfbacks has to play 5'8". Mm-hmm. One of the dominant playmakers has to not be dominant. Mm-hmm. And neither of those guys have ever been not the dominant playmaker. Mm-hmm. I think Ezra Mam will come back and it'll clean them up and they'll go good at the end of the year, but I just think it won't be quite enough to get them into the 8.
Okay. Yeah. I've gone for the Eels in 9th spot, actually. I think they'll be close. They'll get close to the 8, especially with Mitchell Moses steering the ship there. They could scrape in, but I've just got them finishing outside. I've got them 9th. If Moses goes down injured, let's hope not, but if Moses goes down injured, it could be much lower than that. I will point that out. But I guess when we're doing these predictions, we've got to assume everybody's going to be injury-free. Yeah. We can't anticipate an injury here. We just can't do that. We don't have a crystal ball.
Only Tom Trbojevic.
Yeah. So, we're obviously going on the proviso that everybody stays fit. And I think the Eels go close to playing finals, but they don't quite get there. I've got them in 9th spot.
And then the top 8, I've got the Roosters at 8th. This is what I mean, the hardest one I had. I had Roosters 9th, Broncos 8th, Roosters 8th, Broncos 9th, and I settled on Roosters 8th. I reckon the Roosters will overcome their lack of signings, but I reckon they may pick up someone in the middle of the year that'll change their fortunes.
Okay.
I think they'll find...
Yeah, so you think that's... I mean, we've talked a lot about it. Seems like... they've lost a lot of players and haven't replaced them, so you can only assume from that they've got salary cap room, and so they should be able to pick players up mid-season. Yeah,
I think they'll find someone that they were going to signing for 2026, and then they'll get an early release for them, and that'll clean up a lot of what happens at the beginning of the year as well. That's a full Nostradamus level prediction there, but I think that's really what's going to happen. They're working on their team,
Yeah.
It was well publicised. They let go of a bunch of players, lost a lot of players, and didn't replace them with anyone. And I think they're working on the team in the background now, and I think they'll sort it out.
Yeah. So this is 8th, isn't it? Yeah. So we're on a unity ticket on this one as well. I've got the Roosters 8th as well. Obviously, they have lost. I think Corey Parker mentioned it. It was 1,250 games of experience they've lost. With Michael Jennings retiring, Luke Keary going to Catalans, Joey Manu going to Rugby Union, Terrell May's gone to the Tigers, Joseph Suolii's already gone to Rugby Union as well, Satili Tupanua's gone to the Bulldogs, JWH has gone to Hull. They've lost a lot of players. They have picked up Chad Townsend from the Cowboys.
Who wasn't meant to play.
I just think, again, same theory as the Eels, really, in the sense that you've got to assume everybody's going to be fit, and I still think their top 17 is good enough to make the 8. So, again, if they get injuries, they could easily miss the 8 because their depth is gone. That 1,250 games of experience that's gone, well, that's a lot of their depth that's gone. And so that means, well, they're very heavily reliant on their top 17 staying fit for the whole year. So, assuming that, I think they scrape in the 8. But again, if they get injuries, they could easily miss.
Remember, they got a couple of players in Brandon Smith and Sam Walker to come back.
Yes, they do.
As well.
Yeah, that's right.
So I reckon around that middle of the season type period is where they're going to get their run. And then 7th, I have the Sea Eagles. As much as I think Anthony Seibold is not that good of a coach. As you keep saying, you got to remember that we're assuming everyone will be fit, and I think Tom Trbojevic being fit, he's going to go play Origin. That's where they're going to drop some games. I think the Sea Eagles can get to 7th, and then probably come out of the finals in the first round.
Got the Sea Eagles 7th, do you? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I'm going to go the Cowboys, coming 7th. I just think they're going to win enough games at home to get them in the 8. I think that home ground advantage will stand them in good stead. I still think Todd Payton. I think he is a really solid coach. And they played finals. They played finals last year as well. So I think they're sort of going to have a similar season to what they had last year. They have lost Val Holmes to your Dragons, though, which is a bit of an issue for them.
He's a goal kicker.
They've lost Chad Townsend, but I think he was on the way out anyway. He was just about done anyway. I think they have a similar season to what they had last year. And I think Todd Payton, I'd love to see how he went with a better roster. I think he is one of the better coaches in the competition. I know. He's sort of had mixed results there, but I see them making the 8 again this year.
And at 6, I have Wayne Bennett's Rabbitohs. Even though they've got players out for extended injuries, I know they're going to have issues with that, but I just think that Wayne Bennett kind of plays a brand of football that is so consistent that he doesn't require a lot of depth because everyone will play that really simple, consistent role anyway. He's not really the encouragement of the X Factor style player. It was like the Dolphins were going so well last year until he ruined them by going and signing for the Rabbitohs and started coaching the Rabbitohs instead. Yeah. And, they didn't have much depth. They still don't have much depth. So I think he'll just get this consistent brand of football out of him. Some of those players will come back and then he'll get into the 6th spot.
Yeah, so we're at 6th, aren't we? Yeah. So, I've gone for Manly again, assuming that everyone stays fit. Yet again, we'll keep saying that. They've got 2 of the best players in the game in Tom Trbojevic and Daly Cherry Evans. So if those 2 stay fit for the whole season, I think there's a spot in the 8 for Manly. Again, though, I think, I'm not going to put them any higher than 6th. I think that's where they land again, even if everyone stays injury-free. But those 2 superstar players being injury-free, that's enough for them to get into the top 8, in my opinion.
And 5th, I have my Dragons. I think Shane Flanagan's going to get them in. I think the addition of those experienced players makes a massive difference. The things like Tyrell Sloan having to go out to the wing bolsters that fullback position with Clint Gutherson. Damien Cook at hooker, like their spine just looks better to me. Even though who's it, Lachlan Ilias and Carl Ferguson, what's his name, Carl Flanagan. The halves pairing aren't the best halves pairing in the league. When you put Clint Gutherson and Damien Cook into that mix, Damien Cook obviously alternating with Jacob Little because Jacob Little has been pretty good, but I think they can go pretty well. First time that's the highest I've had them in years, though. Yeah, well,
that'll be their first top 8 appearance since 2018. So there you go. So in 5th spot, I'm going for the Bulldogs, actually.
Oh, so our team.
So we've both got our teams coming 5th this year, our respective teams. Yeah, I mean, they've lost Josh Adokar, which, look, I'm a bit worried about. He's been in their top 2 try scorers, or every year. I think he was at the Bulldogs for 3 seasons. Every season he was in their top 2 try scorers. So
I remember the first season it took him ages to score a try as well.
Yeah. So, look, I'm a bit worried about that. But look, outside of him, they haven't really lost, or they haven't lost anyone else of note. Look, they picked up Marcelo Montoya. Look, I don't think he's
no Josh Adokar.
He's no upgrade on Josh Adokar, that's for sure. But they picked up Satili Tupanua from the Roosters. I think he's a handy pickup. But I just think it's more because I think Cameron Ciraldo getting another pre-season into them. We saw that huge improvement. He had 15th. They finished in his first season there. He got another pre-season under their belt. Then they finished 6th. So while they haven't done the recruitment to finish much higher than that, I don't think they're going to go any worse than they did last year. I think another pre-season under his belt with them, he'll keep instilling those good training habits into them. And yeah, I've got them slightly improving on last year in 5th spot. I think you talked about it a few times. They fell away towards the end of the year, losing those last 3 games, but with a couple of weeks left in the season, they were the best defensive team in the comp. So they weren't too far off, a bit more polish there, and I think they can improve a little bit. They're not going to be in premiership contention. They need to do more recruitment to get in premiership contention, but I think they slightly improve on last year.
Okay. At 4th, now top 4, I have the Sharks at 4th. Mm-hmm. I don't know why. I don't have any justification for it. It was all that was left.
But they perform really well in the regular season. They are a top 4 regular season team. The problem for them is they just fall away when they get to the finals.
Yeah, they won their first finals game in forever last year.
Yeah. I think it might have been their first finals win since 2018 or something like that. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with their regular season performance. There's every indication to think they're a top 4 regular season team yet again. So, like you, I've got them in 4th spot as well, the Sharks. Yeah.
And then I've got your Bulldogs in 3rd, man. I think they'll improve. I think they don't have the attack anymore, but all that's going to happen is their defense is going to improve. I think they're going to defend. They remind me a little bit of the Dragons in 2010, where their attack was bad, but they just played simple, consistent football. Hit the ball up 5 times, kick to the corner, defend, and I think the Bulldogs are going to have the best defence in the season, in the best defence out of everyone this season, and I think it's going to get them into 3rd spot. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, I think they're going to make it to the grand final as well.
Okay, that's a big call. So you got the Bulldogs who lost in week 1 of the finals last year. You've got them making the grand final this year, so that's a big jump. So we're talking about 3rd spot, aren't we? Yeah. So I'm going to go for the Broncos to come 3rd. I just think the addition of Michael Maguire as coach, it's going to be a huge improvement for them. I think we talked about bad habits before. I think he's going to get them into a lot of good habits, Michael Maguire. I think that they'll be a lot more polished. Their defence will be a lot better. He's a hard taskmaster. And I think the problems for Michael Maguire have come after a few years. The players get sort of jaded with his methods and they stop listening to him after 3 or 4 years. But in the first year, he has a real impact. And, you know, we've talked widely about his credentials as coach. He coached South Sydney to that premiership in 2014. He won a Super League premiership in England as well. He coached New South Wales to that Origin Series win last year. Coached New Zealand to that Pacific Championship win in 2023 where they beat Australia 30-0 in that final. So the introduction of Michael Maguire, I think, is going to be a huge improvement for them. I know you've talked about, look, those halves might get in each other's way a little bit. I think there's different opinions on this subject. I think their best option when Ezra Mam comes back is to just move Ben Hunt to hooker. I think Ben Hunt is a better hooker. I think he's better at hooker because he doesn't have to think about it as much and he can just play footy. He can play what's in front of him. I think when he's halfback, I think there's almost too much in his head and he gets confused and he almost doesn't know which option to take some of the time. But I think hooker will improve him, and I think with him at hooker and Mam and Reynolds in the halves, I think they'll go well this season.
I was at a Dragons event once and Ryan Webb's talking about Ben Hunt, said the best thing, I think, best way to describe him was, we've got one of the best hookers in the comp playing at halfback. So when he moves to... That's why I have them I think they'll struggle at the beginning of the year, but come good, but still miss the 8. Obviously, first and second, we both have Storm and Panthers there.
Yes.
I've got Panthers coming second and Storm winning the minor premiership again.
Same here. Exactly the same.
Yeah.
Just those losses for Penrith. Jerome Luai leaving and James Fisher-Harris leaving. Basically, I think that's enough for them to finish second, and I think that's enough for the Storm to go in front of them.
And I've got my tip for the grand final, by the way, is Melbourne versus Bulldogs and Melbourne to win.
Okay, right, okay. Yeah, so my tip for the grand final is the Storm and the Panthers and the Storm to win. So.
Just finish. We got a couple more things on rugby league.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, when we're talking about Rabbitohs, Latrell's injury is much worse than originally feared. He was originally thought he'd be back in round 2, but now he's going to miss at least 2 months of the season.
That's right, and this broke just after our podcast last week. So last week we were of the impression that, he was probably just going to miss the pre-season and he was a chance of getting back for round 1. So now that's turned into a 2-month injury. So there's an update to that story. Yeah, Latrell Mitchell out for 2 months. It's not what South Sydney need after the last 2 years of underwhelming performances. And just with so many distractions around Latrell, we talked about it last week, he's on that $1.1 million a year salary, and if it's not injuries, it's some other distraction. So they're just not getting value for money out of him at the moment, and that continues here with this 2-month injury. Yeah,
it's funny, the thing with him is he has so many distractions off the field and everything like that, and then also injuries.
Yeah.
But has kind of... I haven't seen the stats, so I'm sure somebody's going to fact check me. He kind of misses just as much matches as Tom Trbojevic through injury. But when they announced Tom Trbojevic injuries, people on the internet are like, "Oh God, again, typical. We know it's going to happen. Manly's going to go bad." When Latrell gets injured, because of all those other distractions and everything, people go, "Oh, this guy, he gets injured again. What's wrong with that guy?"
But this is the difference, isn't it, between Tom Trbojevic and Latrell Mitchell? Is that for Tom Trbojevic, the injuries are the only problem.
Yeah, exactly.
When he's on the field, he's $1 million. He's a superstar. He's one of the best players in the game. He won that Dally M medal in 2021 and Manly made the top 4. When he's on the field, he's an absolute superstar. When he's fit, he's an absolute superstar. Everything else he does is perfect. Latrell Mitchell's the opposite of that.
Yeah, exactly.
There's distractions, there's dramas. There's other problems with him, so that's the huge difference between Tom Trbojevic and Latrell Mitchell.
How people get angry at Latrell for being injured, but then you're like, they're not actually angry at him for being injured. They're angry at him because he's missing more games, and he has all that other issue.
Yeah, it's because the injuries come on top of all the other dramas around
and he lasted almost the whole off-season without having a negative news article. But it's just too much stuff from the past, too much history from Latrell.
Yes.
He's going to be appearing on, I don't know if he's going to be, Mark Geyer is starting a new podcast.
Yeah.
And Latrell Mitchell's episode's already been recorded, and apparently it's really, really good. So watch out for Mark Geyer's podcast.
Speaking of podcasts...
Paul Kent... Vic asked... this was sent to me. Vic asked, is Paul Kent getting a podcast? No, he appeared on Steve Gillis' podcast.
Apparently he is going to start his own podcast, though. Yeah.
I'd love to appear on that. Let's have a conversation, Kenty. Yeah. So, he appeared on...
Apparently it's going to be called Kenty, his podcast,
He appeared on Steve Gillis' podcast and discussed his... fight.
Yes, the infamous falling into a tree incident.
Yeah.
I think that tree is now famous. I think it's on... you can look it up. You can go to... I think it's on Google Maps. You called Kenty's tree. You can actually go to the tree and, I watched the podcast. He went on Steve Gillis's podcast. Steve Gillis was a player manager for a number of years. I'm not sure if he's still a player manager. He might be. I'm not 100% sure on that. But he's been in and around the game for a number of years, Steve Gillis. Look, to be fair, I watched the whole podcast. He could see the funny side of that sort of stuff, to be fair to him. He said... I get a laugh out of that, people leaving monuments at the tree where he fell over and everything. So, there was that side of it. He could laugh at himself in that regard. But there was another side of it where he said something like, there were probably 100 other incidents like that on the night that might happen, but because I'm famous, there was more attention on mine. Well, Kenty, look, that's the price of fame, right? Yeah. You enjoyed the benefits of being famous for so long by being paid huge money that came with having a big profile. So you can't take the benefits of fame and then not accept the downsides of fame as well. You have to take all of fame if you're going to be famous. And one of the downsides of fame is that, yes, if you have an incident like this, of course there's going to be a lot more attention on your incident than there would be involving incidents involving people who are not high profile.
Yeah, exactly. That's what fame is.
That's what it is.
I said it earlier, like if it was two guys in the thing at the Vegas hotel, no one would care. But the simple fact is, it's two rugby league players.
That's the price of fame. If you don't like it, well, don't be famous.
And also, no one in America would have cared about that Vegas thing.
Yeah.
All Australian, it was all over Australian media.
Yeah, of course not.
And no one in America would have cared about Paul Kent being thrown into a tree.
No.
But the fact is, he's a media personality that everyone knows. He's very vocal. He says many things, and he's in the news for a negative reason. That's it.
Yeah, that's the thing. You can't enjoy the benefits of fame and then expect to be exempt from the downsides of fame.
Yes, exactly. That's it for Rugby League. Next week's podcast, we'll go over the games and see what excuse Ricky Stewart has for when the Rabbitohs lose.
Raiders,
Raiders.
Yeah.
That is not my tip. I haven't entered my tips yet. I wait until the last possible minute. But I still expect the Raiders to lose. Nick Kyrgios is... Oh, you read a column about this, yeah?
Yes.
Nick Kyrgios has made a comment on Boris Becker. Boris Becker comment, basically.
Yes.
Which was he could labelling Boris Becker a criminal. It's so hard.
It's one of those things, isn't it? Like, you look at what he says and you go... Well, yeah, I mean, look at there's truth in it, obviously, because, and I'll get to it in a second. Boris Becker was convicted and he served an 8-month prison sentence. It was meant to be, it was a 30-month prison sentence, but he was released after serving just 8 months. Mm-hmm. And that was for that sentence was for hiding £2.5 million. I'm not sure of the conversion rate, but pounds obviously worth a lot more than Australian dollars.
Anywhere from $2 to $3.
Yeah, so we could be talking about $5 million Australian dollars worth of assets and loans in a bankruptcy fraud case. He was released from prison in December. So that was Boris Becker's criminal incident, right? And so it's one of those things where you go, all right, well, technically Nick Kyrgios is right. He was a criminal. But look, nobody else is saying this on social media. It's like the Jannik Sinner situation, and he just gives it to Jannik Sinner all the time. All right, look, he's right, but he keeps saying it all the time. So it's one of those things Nick Kyrgios just doesn't understand that, look, certain things just don't need to be said all the time.
Yeah,
like, people are aware of things. You don't need to keep repeating them on social media all the time. And so what happened was the Swiss tennis account sort of made light of how Nick Kyrgios keeps attacking Jannik Sinner on social media. And so they posted this like fake, those AI generated fake pictures where you use AI to generate a picture of a 29-year-old as an 80 or 90-year-old. And so there's this old picture of Nick Kyrgios lying in a bed, and on the picture it's got, quote, 2084. Did I tell you about the time Jannik Sinner failed 2 doping tests? This is taking the mickey out of Nick Kyrgios, of course. And then there's another line where Nick Kyrgios says, the whole system is rigged. Why won't the establishment do anything? This is why I never won a big title. This is this fake quote from Nick Kyrgios from 2084. And so then Boris Becker found the post amusing. Him and Nick Kyrgios have had a bit of back and forth over the years on social media, and Becker just replied, look, lol, in reply, laugh out loud for anybody who's over the age of 40 and is not aware, I should say 50, and is not aware of, that LOL means laugh out loud. And Nick Kyrgios, he couldn't take even the smallest of jibes from Boris Becker, and in response he said, what's up, criminal? So this is again Nick Kyrgios having to resort to these petty personal attacks because he's got such thin skin and can't take any sort of criticism.
I know he didn't really respond to the post as well. He had to target Boris Becker instead. They have this thing punching down. That's the whole thing in the world right now. We'll get to Marty Sheargold in a minute, but punching down. Yes. Nick Kyrgios only punches down.
Yeah.
That's one of the things. He looks for any small thing and goes down.
This is and Boris Becker. All right, he's had this issue where he's gone to jail. But look, he's done his time. And this is still a legend of the sport. He won 6 Grand Slam titles, including 3 Wimbledon titles. This is a legend of the sport being disparaged by Nick Kyrgios on social media. Nick Kyrgios has never won a major title here.
Yeah, it's because Jannik Sinner tested positive to doping.
Yeah, that's the thing. Nick Kyrgios will lose in the first round of Grand Slams, but he'll say that he doesn't win a major because of Jannik Sinner. Yeah. Even though he lost to a player nobody had heard of before.
Exactly. Still on Jannik Sinner.
Yes.
Feliciano Lopez is firmly on Jannik Sinner's side in the doping saga and says he's disappointed with the treatment that people in tennis and fans are having with the way they're talking about Jannik Sinner.
Yeah, Feliciano Lopez posted on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, saying, and I quote, "The lack of empathy given the circumstances to someone who proved himself innocent is beyond disappointing," end quote. Excuse me, he's been banned for 3 months here. If he was innocent, why has he been banned? Why has he agreed to a 3-month ban if he was innocent? He's not innocent. That's why he's been banned for 3 months. And I don't know why he was allowed to agree to a ban, but still, all right, it is what it is. He accepted a 3-month ban. So if he's accepted a 3-month ban, clearly he's not innocent. Yeah. So I don't know what Feliciano Lopez is talking about there. If he was innocent, he wouldn't have had...
used a lawyer to get an innocent thing from the tennis, what are they called, ITA? And then the actual doping authority had to come in and say, no, actually, dude, you're guilty.
Yeah, WADA,
As we have highlighted so many times on this podcast, the acceptable amount of closterol in your system is 0.
Yeah.
And how much did he have? More than 0.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter picograms and size and amount, more than 0.
Yeah, he accepted a ban. You don't accept a ban if you're innocent. Sorry, exactly. Feliciano.
Yeah, tennis still can't handle the drugs. But the big news story in all of sports this week is Marty Sheargold, who's been sacked by Triple M. They've agreed to part ways mutually.
Yeah, we know that he's been sacked. Yes,
because of comments he made over the Matildas getting smashed in the whatever cup they're currently playing in.
Yeah, it's called the She Believes Cup.
Is that the one that they're playing, or is that the one they're playing? They're playing the Asian Cup next. They're hosting the Asian Cup here. I don't know. They've been beaten.
Yeah, next year the Asian Cup. Yeah.
And he made lots of comments that are all over social media, and everyone's got the outcry. Nathan Cleary's weighed in because he's dating one of the Matildas, and he's lost his job.
Yeah. What do you think,
man? It's hard. Whatever you say, you're going to be blasted by someone, but
yeah.
In the end, I think he went a little bit too far, over the top.
Did, yeah.
But
yeah.
Okay, so I don't want to say but because but means ignore everything I just said. In the end, he went a little bit too far.
Mm-hmm.
You also have to realise that I have actually seen and heard, as a massive MMA fan, I can't remember who it was. I actually looked it up, but I didn't want to name names. There was a radio thing I was listening to with a woman when the UFC was on, not this time in New South Wales, because, New South Wales signed an agreement to hold 3 or 4 UFC events or whatever. And when the last one was when Sean Strickland fought DDP last year. And one of the comments that I heard on the radio from a female was something along the lines of, as if you'd want to watch 2 bullfeds hit each other, I'd prefer to go through Chinese water torture or something like that. Right? And so that was okay. There is some kind of... You have to... I always look at the hypocrisy more than the thing. I don't agree with what Marty Sheargold said. A lot of women's sports are boring. Guys, a lot of men's sports are boring.
Yeah.
There are some sports that women are better than men. It's not a blanket rule. Unfortunately, men are better at soccer than women. The women's soccer team in Australia is more successful than the men's. It's a harder competition. I don't think that's an excuse either. I hate that excuse. Oh, it's because it's a harder competition. Nope. You can only play who's in front of you, and everyone is on an even keel. Mm-hmm. Actually, in all competitions, by the way, it's like that. Everyone is on an even keel. I would prefer to watch female gymnastics than male gymnastics because the females are better at gymnastics. I would prefer to watch female netball than male netball because the women's netball is actually better. It's a higher skill. Yes, men can beat women in netball, but it doesn't make them better. It just makes them bigger. There's a lot of female MMA fights that are terrible, but and you get a lot of complaints about it on the internet, on MMA and UFC subreddits especially, but no one complains about Valentina Shevchenko. She's legit awesome. The Shevchenko, one of the greatest fights of all time was Wei Li Zhang versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. I hate the blanket statements of women's sports are boring and I'd rather nail what was it? I'd rather drive a nail through my penis than watch women's sports. That's stupid.
Yeah, that's just stupid.
It's too far.
And what the thing that annoys me is, and the other thing he said, which was completely ridiculous, where he said players reminded him of, I quote, year 10 girls, end quote. That's just a stupid, ridiculous thing to say. And look, the thing that annoys me is because an idiot like Marty Sheargold has made ridiculous comments like this, well, then that drowns out any legitimate criticism of the overhyping of the Matildas. And so the problem is that I think it's still valid to say that, well, the Matildas getting a bronze plaque just for making the semis of the World Cup, that was overdone. They didn't deserve a bronze plaque for making the semis. If they had won the tournament, great, go for it. Do what you want. They win the tournament, give them all a statue, absolutely. But they didn't win the tournament. They lost in the semi-finals. So if you make the semi-finals of the World Cup, that's not worth having a bronze plaque. And I'd be saying the same if it was the men's team as well. If the men's team had made the semis and lost, I'd be saying, no, don't give them a plaque. And I think that the plaque was overdoing
remember, it was going to be a statue.
Yeah, it was. And then they realised, well, look, that's a bit much, so we'll just make it a bronze plaque. But even that's a bit much, right?
It was the thing with that plaque and the statue is we talked about at the time. Australia made the basketball World Cup semis. Not this year. They got smashed last year, year before. They got smashed, but the previous time they did. They made, I think, the semis in the Olympics as well. Didn't get no bronze plaque. And then what happens if in the next World Cup that Matildas team wins?
That's the thing. Where do you go if they win?
Do you remove that crappy plaque of the last crappy team?
So the Matildas win the next World Cup, right? And you're like, oh, how good's that bronze plaque of that time they came fourth?
We better scrape that one away. There should be, if you want to have discourse about it, there should be legitimate concerns about the direction the Matildas are taking. They lost all 3 games in the, what's it called? She Believe Cup.
Yeah.
They lost all 3 games. They lost last night, their last game. They're now out of it, I believe. They lost to a lower-ranked team in Colombia that are not a very good, highly-ranked team. Yeah. And they didn't just lose, they got smashed. Since their World Cup success, they have been going terribly.
And so this is the problem when idiots like Marty Sheargold make comments like this, is any legitimate criticism of their performance, which is legitimate given their recent results, just gets completely drowned out by these stupid, ridiculous comments by Marty Sheargold. There
is some the main thing is he basically said all women's sports are terrible when they're not, and they could have had a discussion around the Matildas' struggles that they're currently going through. They're hosting the Asia Cup next year, 2026, and it would be it's exactly the same as when Australia was struggling in the cricket. Or if Australia was struggling in the cricket and we were hosting, say, India coming over, everyone would be talking about it and we'd all be worried. But right now, instead of going man, we're going to host the Asia Cup, and worst thing to happen when you host a tournament is to not make the finals. And Matildas need to do something to fix it. Instead of talking about that, we're talking about Marty Sheargold saying stupid things. And the other thing I really dislike is when it straight away goes to, this is misogynistic. His statements of all women's sports are boring is, sexist. But criticism of the Matildas is not misogynistic. What Marty Sheargold did is sexist, and you can say misogynistic if you like or whatever. You know, defenders of him will say, like, you know, he has a mum, he loves his mum. But to say all women's sports are bad and I'd rather drive a nail through my penis or whatever means you're basically being misogynistic.
Yeah.
But simple criticism of some women's sports performances is not misogynistic. I saw a thread recently on the internet, a massive conversation about AFLW versus NRLW, because the Bulldogs announced their NRLW team. The NRLW is of a much higher quality in a much shorter time than the AFLW when compared to the men. Will the NRLW ever be as high quality as the male? Absolutely not. You have to realistically accept that.
Yes.
Because men are bigger, stronger, faster. Like, that's just a fact of life.
It's just biology, right?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. The NRLW, that doesn't mean the NRLW can't be entertaining. It is pretty entertaining. There's a heap of people who have massive... I've talked about it last year when I went to a game and I saw so many people there to watch the NRLW game beforehand. And kids knew the players and were getting photos and stuff like that. The AFLW is in all sorts of shit. All right, their games are terrible.
It's because they did it too quickly.
Yes.
They gave the NRL's got this right over the AFL. They've expanded slowly. They've gradually added new teams to it. You mentioned the Bulldogs are just adding their team this year. The AFL just went all in straight away, and there were too many teams.
They have these matches that are like massive blowouts.
Yeah,
where it's like 149-7.
Yeah,
that's not a real number, but that's
but we get the
Then
point,
they also have these other games. I saw some for the AFLW that's on. They have these other games that are like 12-7. You know, like they can't get
there's
goals.
games where there's no goals.
That's a massive problem. System of how the AFLW have handled it. And AFL people will say it was a masterstroke because now you've got news all year round.
Yeah,
where the AFL finishes and the AFLW starts. But guys, AFLW sucks. It's terrible. It's not because it's women. It's because the talent pool is not big enough to handle that many teams.
Yeah, the standard is not high.
They need to squish it down. And then they could be like the NRLW, which is very good. The NRLW currently sits around the quality of the, what was it called? The Toyota Cup, which is really entertaining, great fun to watch. Well, I go to one game a year for my tipping comp, which is the Roosters versus Tigers, because they're all dirty Roosters and Tigers fans, and I go with all the boys. They won't come to a Dragons game. F you guys. But I will go and watch we go and watch the NRLW game there because it's entertaining.
Yeah. I was just going to say a couple more things on this. The first thing I wanted to say was Football Australia released a statement saying, look, they're deeply disappointed by the comments of Triple M radio host Marty Sheargold that he made, the comments he made about the Matildas. Why did Football Australia feel the need to respond to these comments? He's not. It's not like a Socceroos. Like if a Socceroos player had have made the comments, or a soccer commentator had have made the comments, well, then you would expect a response from Football Australia. You would expect that response. That this is just some idiot comedian who has no affiliation with sport. So why did they feel it was necessary to respond to these comments? You don't have to respond to every opinion that's out there. This is someone who has no association with sport at all.
The problem is it went viral. And the post that was going viral was like a recording of the content and the text of the content, and like some people saying like, I'm not going to say who it was, but you know who it is. And so they all have to... everyone has to have to chime in and respond. Like I said, Nathan Cleary's now responding. We're responding. Like, if
the other thing I just wanted to say about it was, look, Marty Sheargold, he's not funny. His show, it was terrible. He's a so-called comedian. He's a terrible comedian. For him to have ever landed a job on a show like that, of that high profile, that gives hope to anybody that he could land that job. I've listened to. Never been an avid listener to his show. Occasionally, I flick it on and listen to it 5 minutes here or there. I've never once laughed at anything he's said. He's a terrible comedian.
Triple M has made a massive amount of missteps in the last year, like letting go of MG. We talked about and putting Bo Ryan and Aaron Woods in, but Gus. Walland,
I'm sure that show's going gangbusters.
Gus Walland was the drive time person. He was also let go. Marty Sheargold was a lead-in. He had an hour before the drive time, and they got rid of the Gus Walland's drive time show and extended Marty Sheargold. Again, massive misstep. Now what are they going to do? Who knows? Anyway, Marty Sheargold has now apologised and said, sometimes jokes fall flat. I hate it when comedians do that as well. Like they make a stupid statement and then say, "Oh, I was just joking," and not everyone likes my joke. Sorry, you didn't like my joke.
Yeah, that's the thing. At least own it. If you really mean it, just own it. It's in other words him apologising. In other words, that's please don't sack me from my job.
It's possible to go too far, and he went too far.
Yep.
He could have said, "Oh my God, I don't want to hear about this women's soccer team because oh my God, they're getting smashed," which they are. They haven't been performing well since the World Cup. Instead, he had to go in this whole rant about women's sports.
Yeah,
watch sport because there's a bunch of great women's sports. Watching Ash Barty win the Australian Open was awesome. That's women's sports.
Yeah, and so because Marty Sheargold went way too far, well, now there's no legitimate criticism of the Matildas' performance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They got beat by Colombia last night.
Yeah.
A lower-ranked team. They won 0 games in the She Blues Cup.
Yes.
And now they're going to come and host the Asia Cup in Australia, and we better get some form. But I believe their coach wasn't there with them. He had a scheduling conflict. And so they have like some reasons for performing quite poorly in the She Believe Cup, but we can't talk about it, and it's not in the news. Because instead Marty Sheargold is an idiot. Anyway, that's it for the week. Pumped for Sunday.
Yes.
Up the Warriors. Hope they smash the Raiders. Always love a good Ricky Stewart rant and excuses. Don't forget to go to Optimum CBD to get all your CBD needs. You must be over 18 to order. Don't forget to sign up to the SmartB tipping comps. Try and beat me and Dan and whoever else is our ambassadors, and you can win $100 a week if you're the best tipster of the round. $10,000 at the end of the year if you're best tipster of the year. We have added some more functions. Make your own private competitions. You can put money on the line. And SmartB will handle all of the distributions and prizes and everything for you. Also, Smart Play Daily Fantasy Sports is coming for the NRL, doing final testing today. It should be ready for Sunday, so you can build a team based on a game instead of having to play fantasy for the whole year. You can play for free, or you can buy SmartB coins and go into a pooled coin game where you can win SmartB coins, and we draw those SmartB coins for money. Over the BBL, we handed out, people won lots and lots of money. And it was heaps fun. I love playing it. It's much easier than committing to a whole season's fantasy team where you can just go, all right, I'm going to play today's game. I've been playing the ICC Champions Trophy for the Australia games only because that's the only one I know all the team players for.
Yeah, that tournament that's not televised in Australia.
Yeah, that nobody knows. I was talking about this yesterday, like nobody knows it's on. But the ICC Champions Trophy is on. Australia versus South Africa was rained out. And that's it for the week, and I'll see you next week for a breakdown of NRL in Vegas and some racism slurs or something like that, whatever happens.
There'll be something.
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
Thanks,
see you
my
then.
producer, John.